All right, we're live. Say hello.
Hi, Alex.
Jules, thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to Aquilina.
Thank you for having me. I love it
Welcome
here.
to the world's finest residences.
It is the world's finest residence.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal. I am president of Related ISG International Realty and host of the show you're watching today, episode number 65 of the Closer Club. And if you can hear all the background noise behind us, I'm not sure, we're trying a new microphone today with a lapel mic given to me by my friend Daryl Davis. We are standing next to the construction site of the estates at Aquilina. We are behind filming the hotel of Aquilina with one of the most, and today we're sitting with one of the most prominent developers in the country, Mr. Jules Trump, who is the developer not only for the estates and the mansions at Aquilina, but the resort at Aquilina and Williams Island as well. Jules, thank you so much for having me.
Great to be with you,
I really
Alex.
appreciate it. And
I really appreciate your program, and I think it does a lot for the community, so it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, my friend. And I will tell you guys, I spent about 30 minutes on the phone with Jules last Friday, and I remember hanging up that phone call and telling my wife, oh my God, I had one of the most invigorating, energetic phone calls that I've ever had with one of the guests prior to the show. And as I told you as we were walking down here, only great things everybody said about you. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. It's very nice to hear.
So let's get started. Jules, what's crazy about this is, so you told me you're 75 years old. You told me that on the way down. I was shocked. I thought you were much younger. Your energy definitely is a lot higher. But you started in the retail world at just 7 years old.
Yes.
And now you've become one of the most prominent developers of luxury properties in the United States and in the country. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my brother Eddie and I grew up in the retail business. Our parents had a retail store in South Africa, and that was basically our beginning. And from a very early age, it was a family business. We would work the store, and you learn a lot in the retail business.
Sure.
You learn about, most of all, you learn to deliver what the customer wants, because the retail business is a business where if you don't do it right, you go out of business. So you learn you've got to serve the customer, understand the customer needs, and then service them extremely well. You know, we learned in the retail business, you have to have repeat customers.
Right.
And the only way to get repeat customers, Alex, is to have raving fans. We believe in the raving fan theory, that our customer, our best recommendation is from another customer. And this has proven so valuable to us. In fact, you know, we've got some quite remarkable statistics. 70% of the business we do, for instance, at the estates, and it was the case with the mansions as well, 70% of the business we do is with people who have some experience with one of our prior developments, either be it Williams Island, or be it the people who lived in Aquilina, or who dine frequently at Il Molino in Aquilina. So we find that as a huge source of business for us, because people have experienced what we have to offer. They know how we deliver, and they appreciate it.
I will tell you from our phone call, when he mentioned raving fans, I almost fell out of my chair, because you don't hear a lot of people talking about raving fans, but it's actually, and we shared this on the phone, it's one of the core philosophies of our brokerage as well.
That's excellent.
How did you transition from retail into real estate development?
Well, getting into the retail, getting into the real estate was our first entry in Florida, was with Williams Island.
Yeah.
And you know, we love South Florida. We think it has so much to offer. But what we felt, we could distinguish ourselves from other developments by providing truly great customer service and really focusing on what the customer needs, researching in depth what the customer needs and delivering that. And I believe we did it at the time quite well at Williams Island, and then we certainly did it in a super well way at Aquilina. But we believe that it's always work in progress. You always have to be learning from your customers. That's why we live in our developments. We want to be the first to hear if there's a problem, and so that we can deal with it. But we also want to be the first to hear customers' ideas of innovation and so on, and what the customer needs are. And we believe it's the only way to really get to understand what the customer is looking for.
That's right.
You've got to live it, and you've got to eat your own cooking.
That's right.
And this is a very important element for us.
Sure. What I love about that is when you look at the raving fans and the customer service aspect, you're only as good as your reputation.
Correct.
And whether the brand is Aquilina or another brand, or if you decide to develop something else that's not named Aquilina, your reputation always goes along with it, no matter what that development may be.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about the access that you have to the ultra high net worth individuals. I mean, you pull up into the parking lot here at Aquilina, it's the who's who of cars, right?
Yes. By the way, we have the largest collection of Rolls Royces anywhere in the country, maybe anywhere in the world, but the largest collection of Rolls Royces. So it's really
and I pull up in my Ford Raptor pickup truck, which is a great pickup truck, but not a Rolls Royce. What are these the ultra high net worth individuals that you have access to? And we're going to get into what are they looking for in their properties? But what are they talking about South Florida? What's bringing them? I mean, they can buy anywhere in the world, right? Why are they buying South Florida in particular, and in particular Sunny Isles?
Well, I think it's more a case of, you know, they're buying based on the brand. You know, the people are familiar with the brand, and you know, this is what's drawing them. I mean, Sunny Isles is very nice. Yeah. Miami is wonderful, but what's drawing them is the brand. You know, and you know, we have 12 acres here, 12 and a half acres, so it's a large property. You know, other people might have put, instead of where we've got 400 or 500 total condos on this 1,200 acres, others could have several thousand.
Sure.
And you know, we have specially built it as an estate where there's lots of space, where we integrate everything into the ocean. Yeah, you know, from any point in Aquilina, Alex, if you walk around, you'll get a sense of the beach and the ocean, and that's, you know, where we're sitting. This is typical. You're sitting on a green lawn
with the beach behind
trees,
water
beach behind you, and perhaps the rain coming in a few minutes. But
you know what I love most about your answer is Miami and Sunny Isles Beach were secondary to their choice of buying in South Florida. Their first choice was the property, and it just happened to be that the property was located in Sunny Isles Beach, Miami.
Correct.
So what is it? What is it about the property or properties in general? What are the key, and I think you had a great way to describe it, which was knowing your client's needs and the real home factor.
Yeah.
What is it about the client needs and the real home factors that's bringing them to Aquilina, let's say?
Well, I think first of all you have to deliver, as you said, real homes. We deliver something that it's not just a place on the beach. It's a real home, and if people choose to make this their primary home, they can do so. Many of our customers over time become permanent residents as opposed to part-time residents, and we're obviously seeing more and more of this from the New York and California areas and so on. So we start with building real homes, and then we build luxury into everything we do. You know, it's we use a phrase in guiding our design: art, architecture, and lifestyle.
Okay.
And you know, wherever you look, we try and focus on making beautiful, providing great amenities, providing enough in terms of amenities that people never have to leave Aquilina. In terms of, if you take, for instance, food, you know, which is a major amenity for people. You know, we provide several. Once the estate is built, there will be 7 different locations that people can eat. Okay. And you know, with different varieties of food, so they never need leave Aquilina should they so desire. So that's a wonderful amenity. The beach, of course, and the waterfront activities are great amenities. There are interesting people here. We have the most interesting people in the world living here. And you know, interacting with them frequently, it's very, very important to us.
So as long as you make this ultra high net worth individual feel like it's a home, and that they're coming home, not just a vacation property.
Right, exactly.
Give them the amenities that they never have to leave.
Right.
And give them an experience unlike any other when it comes to customer service.
Look, the hotel, you know, we're rated #1 hotel on the beach in America by TripAdvisor. And we've had this rating 4 years running.
That's amazing.
It's a huge, you know, there's thousands and thousands of hotels on the beach in America. So a lot of this is due to the first class service we give. And people in the resort, people living in the residences, all experience exactly that. We have the same management. It's the person you met a few minutes ago. He runs the mansions, but he works here in the hotel. You know, it's all interchangeable, and so people experience really great service. And for wealthy people, this is what they want.
That's right. So they pay extra for that service.
You know, it's all in what they're buying.
Sure.
It's all. Look, you know, one of the things we do try and do is great value. You know, if you look at the value we provide, the finishes that we provide, the amenities we provide, you know, they're not really paying extra.
Yeah.
It's all wrapped in, but you know, we want to see that we get the business.
Yeah. Well, luckily we're under umbrella, so we're good here. Talk to me about when you went from developing Williams Island to where we are now. What would you say? How has Miami developed? And if you were to give Miami an age, what age would you give it in terms of its lifespan of where we are and how much more we have to go?
You know, I'd like to answer a little differently,
Sure.
Alex, if I may.
No, that's true.
I'd say Miami is a mindset. It's more of a mindset than a particular age.
Okay,
You know, it's and I think that's the answer to it.
That's right. So let's do a little lightning round action. One is, and I think you may have touched upon it already. We talked a lot about the different awards that has been won here at Aquilina. Now we're starting to get wet. We may need to get an umbrella here, and I love it. This is what happens when you go live. But is Aquilina
Another umbrella, please.
Yeah, we may need a couple of umbrellas. Would you say that I love this? But this may go viral, Jules. We may go viral with this. Would you say?
Bring my iPhone. I left it on the table. Thank you.
Would you say that the award of being ranked the top hotel 4 years in a row, beachfront hotel in the United States by TripAdvisor, would you say that's the best award you've won?
That's by far. It's number one. It's and TripAdvisor is by far the most credible judge.
Yeah.
Because it's thousands and thousands of people all saying that we achieved it.
So we decided to go live. We were going to pre-record, and here we are with a little rain. Talk to me about fear. What's the biggest fear that you have?
You know, if I can use a different word, frustration. If I can talk about
absolutely.
What's my biggest frustration. You know, I think we're curious people. We want to know what people want and so on. One of my biggest frustration is brokers who don't take advantage of understanding the full market,
Sure.
where they pigeonhole themselves into a particular part of the market, be it Brickell, be it Bell Harbour and whatever, and they pigeonhole themselves and limit themselves.
So why don't you move over a little bit since you're getting soaked here. We're going to adjust our camera or our position here because we are getting a little wet, but go ahead.
Okay. Where they pigeonhole themselves and they don't expose their customers to all that Miami has to offer. And you know, we encourage our customers who come here to see other places so that they can compare. And I think it behooves the brokers to do that. By the way, when I spoke earlier of who are our customers, we define two groups of customers.
Sure.
One is the brokers who are critical to our business, and we really make a big deal out of making the brokers feel great, providing them a position.
Why don't we switch? Because he's getting.
No, I'm doing okay. I'm doing
great.
okay. We'll finish in a minute.
No, that's okay. Here you go. Why don't you cover yourself there, and that way you're protected. And now we have more red umbrellas in the shot.
No, you know, one of the major things we do is provide the brokers with all kinds of facilities so that we will allow them they can bring their customers to dine in our facilities, to sit on our beach, including in the good weather, not just in the bad weather, and really enjoy the facilities. So one of the advantages brokers have here is people can really sense what they're getting, and I think it's a big advantage for the brokerage community.
So we need to get more brokers to Sunny Isles and Aquilina.
We sure do.
I'm good, thank you, sir.
We sure do.
Leave it here just in case.
Sure, you got it. We're wrapping up now in a
And
couple
we will
minutes.
make them feel most welcome.
Now, talk to me about one of the questions I love the most is something we'd be surprised to know about you. So, and I asked this to a lot of my guests. What's something we'd be surprised to know?
Well, I guess you were surprised to hear how old I am.
I was surprised to hear
But,
how old.
you know, I enjoy living here very much. I take advantage of, you know, for instance, stand-up paddling. And, you know, that's a great sport for me. Boxing here is great. We have great gym and so on. So, you know, I try and keep very active and take advantage of all that the resort has to offer.
Last question, and then we can try to get a little dry under the umbrellas. If you had a book, podcast, or TED Talk recommendation for the audience, which one would it be?
You know, I listen to so many podcasts,
Sure.
but I love podcasts, and particularly when exercising, it's a great thing to do.
Is there one that stands out for you?
I also like listening to books on tape.
Okay.
And you know, many of the books that talk about how people think, where the world is going, that's the sort of thing that I enjoy listening to.
Jules, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you,
time.
Alex.
I'm
Thank
going to go
you.
behind the camera and turn it off. We got a little wet. This is what happens when you go live and you go outside. I love it.
Thank you.
This is the
Enjoyed talking to you, Alex.
Thank you, Jules.
Thank
Any
you
parting
very much.
words before I turn off the camera?
Thank you, and all the best to the community.
There you go. All right, Lissette, we're live, but we're not live because this is going to be pre-recorded. Say hello to the camera.
Hello.
Hello, future hello. How are you?
Good. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. What an amazing off-camera conversation we had. So we may have to do this more than once because there's a lot of experience and knowledge that you have that you can share with the audience. And I think that we're not going to be able to cover it all today, but I think you have I know you don't like the public eye, but I think you have a lot that you can offer to the viewing audience, and especially to the women just the women out there in general. Actually, the men can learn a lot. I learned a lot from you just in a few minutes off camera. So, you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do the intro. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal. I am president of Related ISG International Realty, host of the show you are watching today. Episode, I'm not sure because this is pre-recorded, one of the few that we do pre-recorded, but host of the show called The Closer Club. And today we're sitting with one of the most prominent developers in South Florida, Lissette Calderon. Not only is she a prominent developer, but she's a prominent woman developer in a male-dominated world, and she's dominating them. So stay tuned because we got some really, really great information coming towards you. So let's get started. Now, Lissette, born and raised in Miami, one of the few. I was actually born and raised in Miami too. You were living on the Miami River, coincidentally. Mm-hmm. You went to the Wharton School of Business at UPenn. You were in Wall Street. Now you're back to the Miami River. Tell us a little bit about your path to where you are today.
Absolutely. And to understand my past, I think, you need to understand really, where I come from and my roots. Being the first generation in the U.S. My parents were born in Cuba and came here in 1960. They were the first to arrive to the United States. They were one of the first of that group to arrive. And so to know them, and having communism taken everything away from them, I grew up in a household where I was constantly reminded that the only thing that, not communism, not an economy, not anything or anyone could take away from you were two things, and that was your character and your education. Yeah. So from the very beginning, I had, kind of those fundamentals and those basic principles. So I literally was born on the Miami River. That is where I came home from the hospital. Yeah. And I am a proud graduate of Coral Gables Senior High. Okay. So go Cavs. And from there, I went on to the University of Pennsylvania to the Wharton School of Business. I was the first person in my family to go to college. Yeah, and you went to Wharton of all places. You didn't only just get into college, but you went to Wharton of all places. It was, and it was one of those that I was very practical. I knew that I had X amount of time to go to college, and I had X amount of time before I had to go and make it out on the real world, because I didn't have a trust fund that I could rely on or anything to that extent. So I knew I had to graduate and have a real job, and to me, one of the things that growing up I always was driven to and I was passionate about was just kind of real estate and business and so forth. My father, nowhere to that extent. My father was involved in real estate to a smaller degree. So I grew up, going with him to job sites and asking what's stucco and what's block, and while everybody else was kind of, playing, I was, asking, why do you do this and why do you do that and why are you building it this way? So I grew up around construction and real estate and drywall and all of that. So I think, it was always within me. My mom has been a licensed real estate agent, broker, since I can remember. Wait, hold on. Does she still have her license? She still has her license. Who does she work for? We have to recruit her. She still has her license, so she, she's been around. She's been doing it ever since I can remember. So I was, born essentially into a family of real estate. It's in your blood. It's in my blood, and it was something. So it just made a lot of sense. And then when you go to Wharton and you're really good with numbers, you do what every person who goes to Wharton that is really good with numbers. you do finance.
Yeah.
And so I was a finance major and a multinational management major because one of my life's great joys is traveling.
Okay.
And I love to see the world and travel the world. And I think, it's just, when you see the world and you experience different cultures in different places, you really can bring it back, to architecture and to living and to urbanism and to style of life and so forth. So it really kind of relates back to everything I do on a daily basis. So I did multinational management because I knew there was that part of me. But then I was ready to graduate in 3 years, but after 3 years, I knew I wanted to stay a fourth year. There was no way I wanted to leave college in 3 years. It was just too much fun, and I literally was enjoying every single second of being at the university. So I had to pick a third major to stay. And to do so, I did what I was really passionate about, and I majored in real estate as well.
Okay.
So I graduated from Wharton with a triple major in multinational management, finance, and real estate.
Triple major? I don't even have one. You triple, Jesus. Okay.
It was my excuse. It was my excuse to stay.
Party. I love
exactly. So I did that, and then I went on to Wall Street because that's what you do when you go to Wharton. You go on to Wall Street, and I was good at my job. I got a job, in private equity, which is the big job everybody wants, and I got to travel, and I got to analyze, and I got to be involved in IPOs and high yield debt offerings, and I was good at my job, but I knew I was never going to be great at it because I was just not passionate about it.
It's so important. It's so important.
I just knew that I didn't love what I did, and I could see my reflection in the mirror, and it wasn't that I knew the person that wasn't looking at me wasn't my authentic self. I knew that I was checking a box and I was doing what I had to do, but it wasn't really what I loved. And when I looked at the lives of my managing director and other people that 20 years ahead of me, I wasn't sure that I necessarily wanted to be them either.
Interesting.
So after a year of doing it, I took a long, hard look, and it also took my mom flying up, who's an extremely intelligent lady, and by that time my father had passed away, which was extremely hard for me, and because I had wanted nothing more in the world than to have been able to do real estate with him.
Sure.
So although he did see me be accepted to Wharton, he never saw me go to Wharton because he passed away my senior year in high school, and that was probably the most life-changing event in my life to date. I grew up overnight, and so for that to happen, and then my mom went up and said, I'm not sure I recognize you, there's something in your eyes, I don't think you're that happy. And I said, Mom, I'm really not, but I feel that I'm disappointing you and I'm disappointing everyone if I don't stay. And she tells me, you're not disappointing me, you're not disappointing, the only person that you answer to is the person that's in the reflection. So, at that point I stayed on because, here I had this 4-year degree and I had this great job at this great company, and it was, what every single person wanted. And about 2 days later, this is before, there was, kind of email and e-docs, I received a one-way ticket to Miami from my mom.
Really?
And that was her way of telling me
that smile on your face.
that was her way of telling me that,
Yeah.
to pursue what I was passionate about.
What I love most about your story, and I know you were at Related as well, and all that, and there's a lot more to the history there, but I'm sitting here and I wish, there are not many interviews that I sit in that I wish I had a pen, because I wanted to take notes, because I think there are 3 things that you said that are really key that I want to make sure the audience picks up on. Number 1, the most obvious passion, right? No matter how much money you're making, if you don't have a passion for what you're doing, it doesn't matter. I think a lot of people say they want to be something, but they never look at the people that are in that position. Like you said, you looked at your bosses and you didn't really want to live that life. I don't think a lot of people ever do that. They say they want to be rich, they want to own a company, they want to do this, but are they looking at the people that own the companies? You wanted to be a developer. You probably looked at the developers and see what they did. I don't think a lot of people did that, so that's really cool.
Absolutely, and to me it was important, and it was important about kind of the authenticity and so forth. And I'm not going to say it wasn't challenging. One of the things that I always tell everybody and I speak to is, just make sure that, at the end of the day, this world is a pretty small place after all.
Yep. And
the only thing you've got, as my grandmother and my parents would always tell me, is your character and your education.
Yep.
But when you speak to character, that's your calling card. and you're going to meet people at every step of life, at all different walks of life. And sometimes this person is going to be your superior, sometimes you're going to be their boss. But I think at the end of the day, the fundamental human values don't change. And be kind to people, and I think people remember that. And I got, in many ways, as a result of where I was, it was just through talking to people, through networking. And I would place a call,
sure,
and they would say, absolutely, I can help you, let me introduce you to this person. And then you would talk to that person, and let me introduce you to this person that can help you. And I really think it was getting out there networking and speaking to people, and every opportunity that I had, sure, whether it was to go to a cocktail party or a networking party, I took advantage of. The way that I really come to Miami and to real estate is that at the University of Pennsylvania, there weren't many people that looked like me. There weren't many women. There weren't many Cuban women. I may have been the only Cuban woman at Wharton, okay, when I was there. And they said, we're having some people, we're having a dinner. This was the dean, and they're from Miami, and they happen to be Cuban. Do you think you being Cuban, can you make it to this dinner?
Sure.
And it was the same day, and I said yes. And I think that made all the difference in the world. So I always tell people, say yes. Say yes to as much as you can.
That's right.
Say yes to everything. Don't be afraid to say yes. And because I said yes to that moment, that literally changed the trajectory of being able to come to Miami and get the positions that I was able to get.
Would you say that was a breakthrough moment for you?
That was absolutely a breakthrough moment, because that person said, if you ever want to come back to Miami, and at that time, my mind was, I'll never forget, I got on that plane when I left the University of Pennsylvania and to Wharton, and I said, so long, Miami. I am now going to, the Wharton School of Business, and I will live in New York, and I'm never coming back. And, lo and behold, a few years later, I'm sitting at this dinner, and he said, well, if you ever think about wanting to come back to Miami, give me a call, because, I may be able to introduce you to people. And sure enough, not only did I call him, but when I called him, he picked up and said, yes, come over to my office. And it was Carlos de la Cruz, who I will forever be grateful to. He's an incredible human being. And although I was not in his business and I was not in his line of work, he said, I know a banker that you would really like to talk to. Okay. And that banker was Adolfo Enriquez. And I met Adolfo, and Adolfo said, would you like to work for me over the summer? So I went to work with Adolfo over the summer, and that was one of the summers while I was at Wharton. And I forged an incredible relationship with him. And then, I graduated and I went on to New York. And when it was time, to come back, I remember, calling a few people, and again, I picked up, and made a lot of calls. And, one of the more interesting calls that I said, I said, I want to go back to Miami. I want to do real estate development. And one of the gentlemen said, well, you really need to think about banking, real estate banking, because there really is no role for women in real estate development.
Wow.
And he's still a developer today. I think he may be retired, but yes, he was a developer, and he was a family friend, family acquaintance. And I think, really, from the generation that he came, I think he was giving me honest advice.
Sure.
I think he was legitimately concerned, saying, I'm not sure that you want to go down that career path, but real estate banking is terrific, and you really should consider that if that's your passion. So I also called Adolfo, and Adolfo said, great, when are you coming back? And I said, well, I'm coming back, but I'd like to do real estate development. And Adolfo, being Adolfo, who is also one of the greatest individuals I know, one of the best leaders I know, and exemplifies everything you want to see in a leader, said, well, if I can't have you, let me put you in front of a few individuals that I think may be interested in talking to you, and you may be interested in talking to them. And that's how my real estate career started here in Miami.
And now, so we're sitting at Pier 19, and we're going to talk about Pier 19 in a little bit, but we're in the Miami River District. Where do you see the Miami River District today, and where do you see it in the next 5-10 years from today?
Absolutely, and I think, and again, to go back to, I think it's, it's to see it, when I first looked at it, which was almost 20 years ago. I'm dating myself, dear God.
No, you're young. I didn't mention any ages because you've had a lot of success in your young age.
It was almost 20 years ago, but again, as I said, and I prefaced, I love to travel, and travel is one of my, life's great loves, and I also love to read. So two of my great loves, and especially, history and biographies and so forth, and Mesopotamia, was founded between two rivers, and kind of that's where civilization started. And then when you go to, most of the great cities in the world, they're on the banks of rivers. If you're in London, you're there. If you're in Paris, if you're in, again, anywhere from Chicago to New York. All of these incredible cities, are based around their rivers, and their rivers are very much a part of who they are as a city, part of the urban core. And then, take Miami back to 1896, when it was one of the few cities that was founded by a woman, Julia Tuttle. When she founded the city, she founded it on the banks of the Miami River, which made all the sense because, again, about transportation and urbanization. So you fast forward, just over 100 years later, and it's, turn of the century, it's 2000, 2001, and I'm, here I am, I've got a great job, I've got a great career. At that point, I had just gone off on my own. I was doing, a smaller townhouse project and so forth. But I knew exactly who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be. And where my passion lied, and I knew that my love was in urban living, and I kept looking at myself, and I realized that there were so many more people like me, that there was a need of young professionals that were completely priced out at the market. At the time, everything was kind of brickle, or you could live out in the suburbs, but something that was kind of at an attainable price point. For those of us that were young professionals, there was nothing. What I could do would be the very sexy thing, which is what I did, which is I lived with mom.
Yep.
If I didn't want to have a 1.5 hour commute, or if I did want, I could have, moved away. And so knowing that, and then having had the opportunity to live in New York, I had lived in a loft, and I knew that was just also an incredible kind of urban experience. And then I would say, lastly, having traveled and seen the river, maybe it was coming back this many years later, I couldn't understand how the Miami River was just so blighted and so neglected, and here it was at the heart of the city. So it was just this paradigm that I think everybody was just kind of blinded. It was the Miami River.
Nobody was paying attention to.
Nobody was really paying. Waterfront at the time was defined as bayfront.
Yep.
And so having been to Chicago, New York, Paris, London, I'm thinking to myself, I mean, we've got this incredible jewel. Why is nobody thinking about this river, and why is nobody, really paying attention to it? The roots of the Miami River are in fact a working river, and I think that continues to be very much at the core of what the river is. I think there's nothing more interesting than seeing one of the tugboats go by with the cargo ships.
Amazing.
I mean, that's just so much fun to see, and I love seeing that. But I knew that one didn't have to be mutually exclusive of the other.
Sure.
I mean, I think for all great cities to work, they have to have synergies between the different uses. So I bought my first project, and that was Neo Lofts, and I broke ground on that in 2002. Okay. And that was my first high-rise, and I would probably say, if you say kind of what's your real breakthrough moment, I think it was probably that, because I think that was the moment where dreams became reality. And I think that's where, it wasn't just about the talk, but it was about the action that was put in place, because, there's goals, there's dreams, and then there's, what did you do that, what were the actionable things that you did to actually get there? Because I think it's I always say, mood boards are great and inspiration boards are great. But there's no free ride in life. That's just the reality. I tell everybody, I'm like,
that's awesome.
I'm like, there's no elevator to the top. You got to take the stairs, and that's just the reality.
So where's the river? I mean, right now we're sitting here. We're seeing some houses behind us getting refurbished or redone, remodeled. We're at Pier 19. You got the working boats back there. Yeah. 5 years from now, what does this look like?
I mean, it's already beginning to look like what I think I dreamed of in the story. I was trying to tell people 20 years ago that they thought I was absolutely crazy. And that was that everybody could live together. I mean, when you come up the river, I love having people, when they visit, taking them on the boat and just coming up the Miami River. And, as I come up, not only can I point to, there's my Neo Lofts, there's my Neo Vertica, there's, Wynn, there's my Pier 19, but then to kind of come up the river and then you see the wharf and you see all these people at the wharf. And,
so we were talking about George Guerra before. Mm-hmm. So George Guerra, Andres Acion, Emmy Guerra, who owns the wharf, and we were all frat brothers. That's how we all know each other.
And I mean, what they've done there, but again, it speaks to kind of, the urban kind of core and the Renaissance and all the different uses coming together. And then I kind of go up and, I go to the, some of the old greats like, Garcias and Casablancas. And
here's our frat brother too.
They've been awesome and they've been here incredible. And then you add some of the newcomers like Sea Spice and Kiki's to it, and you add Crust, right across the way, and all of a sudden you start seeing, kind of the food component, and you see them at all hours. Everybody's there, and I love it because I can arrive by boat in flip-flops and I can arrive by boat dressed up, and it doesn't really matter because you feel just as welcome no matter, how you are. And
so it's a big melting pot of everybody getting along.
to kind of, you kind of come up further, and now you see kind of River Landing coming up. And now we've got, Publix, and you've got, movie theater, and you've got all these other new uses that are coming in. So to really see the river, in less than 20 years, to have that vision of a river with different synergies kind of coming together is a dream come true. And for me, it's exciting. But again, I think, obviously we've got a ways to go. It's great when you start seeing, properties, where you see some of the older properties that maybe had been, abandoned or neglected or blighted.
Being repurposed.
People, you see, the next generation coming in and seeing them through the eyes of, this is beautiful waterfront. Let me put, some elbow grease and turn them around. So I think you're only going to see, just the rebirth, the rebirth already happened, the revitalization. I think now you're going to see kind of some of that maturity along the Miami River.
And now that people are here, it's just going to happen even faster.
Well, and now
the seal is broken, right?
Well, no, because now it's organic. Because now you still have the marine usage. You still have, you still have the tugboats that go by. Everybody loves being on their balconies and watching them go by. You've got the gorgeous 10-acre Sewell Park just down the road, just next to us here at Pier 19, and it's old Miami, if you want. I mean, literally the manatees are right there where you can touch them. We should drive by. So you really, want to see like the original Miami of, the Tequesta Indians. It probably doesn't get more authentic than that. So I think the Miami River represents an authenticity to Miami's roots that maybe no other neighborhood can offer.
Interesting. That's a great way to look at it.
And I love it for that. And so to see how far we've come is incredible, and to see all the different uses come together. And I think, the next 5-10 years, you're going to see the maturity of all these uses coming together.
So let's switch gears, because now you're starting to really go into Allapattah with some big purchases. So first off, where is Allapattah? Because everybody hears it. I don't think a lot of people know where it is. And what excites you about Allapattah? What's happening over there?
To me, Allapattah.
So where is it? Let's start there.
To me, Allapattah really is just a natural progression of being on the Miami River.
Okay.
The southern border of Allapattah is the Miami River.
Got it.
So, it's kind of, it makes sense. So it's like the north bank of the river is Allapattah. So Allapattah, is defined by, you take kind of I-95, you take, like 27th Avenue.
Okay.
You take the Miami River on the south, and then you take kind of northwest 36th Street, which is 112, that expressway. So you kind of take that quadrant. You can go maybe a little bit further west, but really kind of, about 27th or so. You take that quadrant, and within that quadrant, you've got the health district, which to me is extremely interesting, because if you think about the health district, after Houston, it's the second largest health district in the country.
Oh, wow.
So you've got, 46,000 of, the smartest individuals, working in that area. And as part of the health district, you've also got the civic district, which is, the county courthouses and so forth. So, the state attorney's office and a lot of that, that's there. So you've got about 46,000 people that are employed just directly in that area. Then just
makes sense now. Okay.
Just west of Allapattah, you've got Miami International Airport, with again some very high-paying jobs, and that's about 38,000 people. And then just outside of Allapattah, just literally on the other side of 95, you've got over 200,000 people working in the CBD. Central Business District.
I was like, CBD, really? Okay, that's interesting.
So really, Allapattah is the last of the original Miami neighborhoods that remains. And to me, what drew me to Allapattah, not only was it a natural progression, because I'm already on the Miami River, so it's kind of where I started my first project, Allapattah 17, which just broke ground. That one's really pretty much at the intersection.
Rental.
It's rentals, and that's kind of at the intersection where Allapattah meets the Miami River. So it was, it was a very normal, natural progression, but beyond the factors of kind of just the employment and the base and so forth, I love how mass transit very much plays a part of Allapattah. Allapattah has the Metro Rail that runs right through the heart of Allapattah, with three transit stops. So to me, that was also exciting. So to have that level of walkability and kind of that sense of neighborhood, and to be within the urban core. It just made a lot of sense, and it was a natural progression.
You just gave all the realtor viewers a college education on Allapattah, because that was information that I had no idea about. So it's actually got me, Albert. I got Albert, the vice president of our company, behind camera. We got to talk. So talk to me about, because you used to build condos, now you build rentals. We're at Pier 19. I shout out to Andres Sacion, Miami Real Estate Group, for representing the leasing here at Pier 19, which I know you guys are doing phenomenally well. Which one do you have a preference towards? Rentals or condos, and why?
And I'll best explain it as an analogy.
Okay.
Every building, whether you build it from scratch or you kind of turn it around like we did with Pier 19, which was a value-add job that I just knew was an underutilized asset and I could reposition it. Every single one of these buildings, to someone like me and someone that takes this to heart, this is a baby. It's a labor of love. Every square inch, every square foot of the building. I mean, you're involved in everything from design to architecture, to paint to art to everything. I mean, it's a labor of love. I mean, it's a passion project. To me, every single job is a passion project. I mean, I literally, I think you're doing something right when on Sunday, a lot of people talk about the Sunday blues. I start getting, I can't wait for Monday. I can't wait to get into the office. It's just, that's how I'm wired. Like, I knew that's what was going to make me happy, and I knew that was what was going to drive me, where I could, look forward to Mondays. And so every project is a labor of love. But whereas a condo, it's this labor of love and it's this beautiful baby and you give it everything you have, but then it turns 18 and it moves away, and then that's it. You never see it again. Yeah. You never see this beautiful child that you've raised, because you turn over your child to a condo association and to a board, and that's it.
They get married and move on.
They really get married and they move on, and sometimes they like you more than other times. But the reality is, you're no longer, you don't have that vested. You no longer have that interest in that project because someone else has taken over that building. Whereas with a rental, because to me it's multi-generational, and it's, I keep them, I don't sell them. I'm not a merchant developer. I don't build them to sell them. I build them to keep them as part of my portfolio. It's like the 18-year-old, and then the 18-year-old can go to college, but then it comes back home. Yeah. And so you can continue to have, you continue to be a part of it. And then I think it just allows for more legacy, by continuing to have ownership and a stake along, with these projects. I can continue not just to be involved, because to me, it's not just about the building you build, but it's about the community and the neighborhood. So by having this presence in here, I can do far more impactful things within the community that we operate in. Got it. So, we were able to do some great things at Sewell Park because we have this community and we have this stake here. And we were able to work, with the Miami River and the Miami River Commission because we have a stake here. Sure. Now we're able to work with, Alapata, and the city and so forth because we've got a stake. So I think, when you're thinking about kind of the long-term best interest, and I think as you grow up, you also start thinking about your legacy and what do you want to be known for. Sure. You just don't want to be known about, for the beautiful buildings that you created, but what was the difference you made? And the difference was not just in, creating a lifestyle for my residents, which, I hope to do, and I hope to bring that urban living and set the pace for kind of the future of urban living, within the urban core. But what else did you do for the community at large? So when I look at the park and I realize that, in less than a year, the park has been completely revitalized. We did something well. At Neil Lofts, we revitalized Jose Marti Park. We worked with the city, and that was a park that had been closed since Andrew. And 10 years later, when we arrived, to the area, we were able to turn that around. So I think that, when you're a stakeholder, and especially as a landlord, you have a lot more say in what goes on. So
rentals is the way to go.
Rentals is definitely the way to go.
So 2 last questions and we'll wrap up. I know you're very busy. You're obviously, as we opened up, one of the most prominent developers in South Florida, but you're a woman developer, which is rare down here. So for the women viewers, what advice or tips can you give them on becoming a woman power player?
And I always tell everyone, when someone says, how do you see yourself as a woman developer? And my answer always is, I'm a developer. I don't see a difference. I am who I am, and I happen to be female, but that absolutely makes no difference in who I am or how I see myself. So I always say that I've never allowed, gender to play a role in, how I perceive myself and in the job that I do. You will always run into those that, the ignorance is on them. Got it. And as recently as as recently as yesterday, I walked in with a gentleman into one of our engineers into a big meeting, and they asked him if he was the owner, and they asked me who I was. I mean, and that was as recent as yesterday. And I just laughed. And so after that individual was gone, I looked at the team and I said, and there is, an example of, but you just have to learn. It's called rhino skin. But I think, to become a power player, and I'm lucky and I'm blessed. I've got 3 amazing girls.
Yeah.
And they're 12, 13, and 14.
All right, so what advice are you giving them?
So, and it's kind of the advice that I give them, and it's probably the best advice I could give to any woman. I give the same advice that they gave me, which is about, the only thing in this life that you have is your character and your education. So I always tell them, be careful on the toes you step on today, as they may be connected to the ass you may have to kiss tomorrow.
You've said that so many times, and every time you say that, so my dad, Cuban, came here when he was like 14, 15. He went to Archbishop Curley, or at the time it was just Curley, not Notre Dame. Now it's closed, obviously. That's where I went. And the way he made it through high school, my grandparents were still in Cuba. He would cut the grass, he'd maintain the grounds at Curley and all that. And he always told me, he goes, because my real name's Alejandro, he always said, Alejandro, keep your powder dry, be nice to everybody, and the only thing you have is your word. Okay, so it doesn't matter what's on this paper. It doesn't matter. You want to put your head on the pillow at night, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and that you can shake somebody's hand and know that you're keeping your word, and that's the character. And I think it's a Cuban thing.
It is, and it does. It speaks, to character and to education. So I'm definitely, tough on education. And then the other thing I always tell the girls is, don't be afraid to fail. So every night, ask them, what'd you fail at today? I don't want to hear about what you did well, because if you did it well, that means you've already mastered it, or you've either already mastered it or it was easy. What did you fail at? Because if you failed at something, that means you pushed yourself, and you pushed yourself beyond the level of comfort. So every day I ask them, what did you fail at today? Did you fail at, you wanted to do the mile at X speed and you didn't do it? Did you fail that you wanted to move up to one level in math, one of my daughters, and the teacher came back and said, I don't think you're ready for that math level yet. I was like, great, that means you pushed yourself. And so, to me, every day I remind them, don't be afraid to fail, because I think failure is what holds people back from truly achieving their dreams. Yeah. And I always say, someone once told me not to bite off more than I can chew. And my response was, I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the motto I've always lived my life. And
that's it's funny, because Albert and I were talking on the way down, and by the time this airs, we would have made the announcement. We're making a really big announcement to our company. And he's like,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's going to be a game changer for us as a brokerage. And we're like, man, we're scared. It's a big announcement. We could potentially lose half our agents. We'll know by the time this airs. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I said, I'm more scared of not doing it than I am of actually doing it. So I love that. What did you fail at today? That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Actually, we have coaching right after this. I'm going to open up coaching.
And I always say that. And like I said, there's no elevator to the top. You've got to take the stairs. There's no free ride. There's a direct correlation between work in and work out.
Sure.
I'm, even to this day, I'm, usually one of the last people to leave the office, if not the last. I enjoy coming in on Saturdays. And it's, quiet time, the phones aren't ringing, I'm not, being pulled in 10 different directions. But I think the only reason I can do that, and I can do that so happily, is because I'm passionate about what I do, and I love what I do, and I don't really believe in live work, when people ask to, live work, balance. I don't.
There is no balance.
I don't buy into it. I think it depends at what stage in life you're at. I told someone that asked me that in the beginning. I said, this is very easy. I said, they were applying for an entry-level job. I said, let's just set the record straight. I said, what is our live-work balance policy here is? Live-work balancing policy is that you work, and when you get to my age, you get to live. I said, but what I was really trying to say is, you can't just arrive, and expect that you're going to get, balance. The corner office. Yeah. I've vacuumed floors, I've painted, and this is with a Wharton degree, and, graduated top of my class with 3 majors. And I think what set me apart and allowed me to work with some of the individuals that I did, and allowed me to earn their respect, because you can't demand respect, sure. You can only earn it, was that they saw that it was the work ethic, that I was willing to work, not just smarter than everybody else, but I was willing to work harder, and I wanted it more, and there was that hunger. So I always say that, and to this day, I still don't buy into, there's any live-work balance. I believe it's live-work blend.
Sure.
And when you do what you love,
you're always working. You're always on.
They just come together.
We talk about that all the time. You're always on.
I closed. I finally did my trip of a lifetime that I had been dreaming of. I went to Africa a few weeks ago, and I was in Africa for 3 weeks. And while I was in Africa, I closed a really large deal while I was there. and that's just kind of the way it was. I took 2 days and I stayed in my hotel for 2 days, and I worked those 2 days, and because of technology and what technology allows us to do, it allows me. Are there people that, I'm not saying you don't need to disconnect and you shouldn't and so forth, but I subscribe to it. It's really a live work blend, and when you love what you do, it's not even work.
Actually, so Albert Carrillo, his wife is Christina Pappas. Her dad is Mike Pappas, owns Kai's Real Estate. His father was Ted Pappas, and he passed away many years ago. But I remember I worked with Mike when I was 19 years old. I was his secretary. That's how I started real estate. So Mike would give me stuff, and I'd write his letters for him. And his dad one time gave me a letter, and he turned it around. It was all torn up. I'm like, oh my God. And we started talking about just work in general. He goes, Alex, if you love what you do, you never have to go to work again. And I was like 19 years old, and I will never, ever forget that. All right, we need to wrap up.
Right.
Last question. Book, and we ask this to every guest. Book, podcast, or TED Talk recommendation for the audience.
I'm a book lover.
Okay, so what's your favorite book? What's a book, like, if you were to recommend one book to the audience to read, what would you recommend?
My favorite book of all time is the Aristotle Onassis' biography.
Okay.
I think that was just incredible. And then my favorite kind of book about more recent is a book called Peak.
Okay.
And it's about reaching your peak in whatever it is that you choose to do.
Sure.
And it speaks to kind of work ethic and repetition, but how to do it intelligently. And I think I think it brings a very interesting perspective and a very realistic perspective to to the business world. So I absolutely love that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Peak. And do you know who the author is?
I can't think of it.
That's all right. We'll add it in the comments at the bottom.
Yeah,
of
it's Peak.
Lissette, I'm going to go around the camera, turn it off. Thank you so much for your time today. If you probably haven't seen, actually I know you haven't read it. If you ever go into your Instagram and you go into your unread messages or whatever, or message requests, you're going to see like 100 from me requesting this interview. That's what it takes.
And I have to apologize
No,
because
you don't have to apologize.
I will get better. I still don't have LinkedIn, much to the dismay of everybody in my company. So I have been promised that someone's going to build LinkedIn for me. And I don't know how to check Insta messages. I don't even know how to do an Insta story yet.
That's very clear. No,
and I don't even know how to do an Insta story.
Lissette, thank you
so much. It was fun. Thank you.
Any parting words before we leave?
Best of luck with your new announcement. I have no doubt it will be great. And to everybody out there, thank you for watching. And if I ever can do anything to help anyone, that's what we're here for.
Just don't send her a message through Instagram.
Yeah.
We are live. Say hello.
Hello, happy to be live.
I thought I had a lot of energy, but this guy beats me.
No other way.
Shahab.
Good seeing you.
Nice
Thanks
to
for
meet
taking the time.
No, thank you for having me. Good afternoon or good morning. Who knows what time it is? My name is
Or
Alex.
evening. China.
It is China.
Stay out.
I told you he's got a lot of energy. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal, president of Related ISG International Realty and host of the show you're watching today, episode number 58 of the Closer Club, coming live from New York City. And today we are sitting with mega developer Shahab Karmely.
Mini mega.
Wait till you see. I never met you. And he walked right out, guns blaring, with Sean from Core Real Estate. And here we go. You ready?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. I'm looking forward to this one.
And congratulations, episode 58.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It puts me in contact
Thank
with
you
great
very
people
much.
like you.
You're too kind.
All right, here we go. Shahab, born in Tehran, immigrated to the U.S., exiled to Europe, which is a pretty cool thing.
Deported.
We're going to talk about that. Back to the U.S., where now you're one of the country's most prominent developers. Cliff Notes version. Tell us a little bit about it.
First of all, I would not go as far as saying one of the country's most prominent, but I am very fortunate to be where I am, given my background. So we used to come to the States. My father had an office in New York for many years. He was, among other businesses, a very well-known rug merchant.
Rug merchant, okay.
Typical.
Yeah.
High-end. And he had an office here. We would visit New York. And in 78, before the Shah was exiled, troubles were starting in Iran. We were here and we're visiting. Things were getting dicey back there. It's like, hey, why don't you stay in the States, go to school here. Everything will be okay. We'll be back in 6 months. Nothing bad will happen here. It's okay, fine. So I stayed behind. They went to Iran. And being Jewish, usually you're not going to be treated very well in the midst of an Islamic revolution, you can understand. They had to run away, get the hell out of Dodge. And I was here, I was in high school on my own in Great Neck, New York, great place. And I couldn't really leave, I didn't have a visa. And my father was relatively well known in Iran, he was prominent, so his passport, all of our passports were yanked. And we could not get a passport issued. So I was at NYU, Stern School of Business, and I got a notice saying, hey, you don't have a visa, you are deported. I was like, wow. So I left.
So you were in your teens, late teens?
No. At that point I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
19 years old, yeah. Yeah, I was a teen, you're right. I felt a lot older, and I felt a lot more confident. You know, it's fake belief in yourself, right? And my parents at that time were in the UK, and they were refugees. They were political refugees. We didn't have passports. We had travel documents. Were stateless, which is horrible. And we went there, and I could not apply for a visa to the US for 2 years because there's a 2-year wait period if you were deported. Okay. So we went 2 years, and I always loved this place. I love this country. It's been phenomenal to me and a lot of other people. And we all moved back here in 1985. And then I stayed here for a couple of years. I lived in Thailand for about 4 years.
Really?
Yeah, my brother was there for 15 years. We had a jewelry factory in Thailand. I did some real estate projects in Thailand, believe it or not. And then came back in towards the end of 91.
Okay.
And I've been here since then.
There you go. Great backstory. Now, I reading up and preparing for this interview, I read that a little bit about your first real estate deal, which you claim was the best real estate deal you've ever done in 1985.
It was the most instructional. It's not the best in terms of having had the best return, but it was, there's sometimes you have a positive experience, and that gives you, wrongly or rightly, but it gives you the confidence to continue with that, right?
So tell the viewers about it. What happened and what did you learn from it?
So this is in 1985, just when we had come back, and my father had maintained his office in New York because they could travel back and forth. I was the one who couldn't travel back and forth. And there was a building on Fifth Avenue which was the hub of all the rug merchants in New York, 245 Fifth Avenue, which is an office building now. And
you still own it?
No. We didn't own it. We had a floor in it.
Okay.
But it was rental. And there were these warehouses in Secaucus, New Jersey, who were trying to poach the rug and interior decoration large-scale businesses away from New York to Secaucus, right? So we got together and said, hey, we need to develop something to compete with Secaucus, but it can't be on Fifth Avenue in New York. It's going to be on the edges of New York City where we can offer the same rate. So had this broker brought us a building, it's very interesting, on 11th Avenue.
Okay.
And this building had been built as a headquarters for Packard cars. They were manufacturing in New Jersey, come across the river, park Packard in this building, 8-story solid building, massive ramps to the roof, reinforced roof. They could drive the cars around, like the Fiat factory in Turin,
Okay.
right? And by the time we got to it, half of it was empty, and the bottom floor was Potemkin. And Charlie Benison and the Tishas owned this building. We negotiated a lease to take over the top half of the building and create something, which I still have the blueprints in my office, called NYORTC, New York Oriental Rock Trade Center.
Okay.
And Charlie Benison, God rest his soul, he took a real shine to me, he was very friendly to me, right? And he helped us, and this is me, first project, not really know what I'm doing, he helped us get industrial revenue bonds because we're keeping an industry in New York City. Sought those with Bankers Trust, giving the construction loan on that at a very low rate, and we created 167 showrooms and created New York Oriental Rug Trade Center. And I'm telling the story very quickly, but negotiating with the landlords, putting all of these different merchants and dealers together on one roof, creating this structure, dealing with the mayor's office to, with the help and to the leadership of Charlie Benison, getting this done and actually coming on the other side of the successful project really put the wing in myself to turn around and say, you know what, I want to do this, I love this business, I want to do this. And as karmically interesting as it is now, this building today is the headquarters for Ford Motor Cars. Recently it was sold, we bid on it again.
Okay.
Georgetown, along with Bill Ackman, bought it.
Okay.
And One River Point, which you see here, the architect on One River is Raphael Vignoli. And the architect who converted the building on 77 11th Avenue, the building that was converted, bought by Georgetown Bill Ackman, the architect they brought in to convert is Raphael Vignoli.
Really?
And that is full circle. And when I went and walked that building, and we bid on it, but these guys paid more because we're end users, I had those blueprints. I took it over to the buildings I was walking in. And really, that was a full circle for my career.
What I love most about that story is what you said, put the wind in your sails.
Absolutely.
And I think, a lot of realtors, because our audience is realtors, right? That's your audience. For
my audience, so we love realtors.
We love realtors. As they look at any deal, and they may look at a $100,000 deal and think it's not that big of a deal, but they don't realize the momentum that puts behind them.
Life, there's a quote that's often used, but every long journey begins with a few first small steps.
There you go. And that was your step.
Yeah.
Now you're one of the rare developers. You have projects in New York City, in DC, which we discussed, and Miami. How do you think Miami and South Florida, because you're not only in the Brickell area, but you're also in Hollandale, how does Miami and South Florida stand out among the other cities?
We made a concerted effort to enter the Miami market towards the tail end of 2013, because in terms of relative value, I looked at Miami and I realized that this is a gateway U.S. city, top 15 world cities in terms of importance, not necessarily size, and a great value. I told you I lived in Thailand for a number of years, so I was familiar with Swire, what they've done at Pacific Place, their other projects. I've always been an admirer of these guys, they're a great company. And I realized what's happening at the Brickell City Center. And my premise was that, look, this is great value, it's mainland US, low taxes, great quality of life, really to me one of the world's most beautiful cities. And you can transact financially here for 20%, 10% what it costs you to do in New York City. To me that was a no-brainer. Swire, the river across from it, that was our first acquisition, turned out to be great for us.
Sure.
And the more familiar I became with Miami, the more convinced I became. This is before President Trump enacted the new tax laws, which to me make a lot of sense, and made it a net positive for Florida and other non-income tax states. Even before that play, I was very attracted to the opportunity and lifestyle. So we decided we want to enter this market. I was very fortunate to have a capital partner who was a friend and a partner who had the same vision as I did. Our timing was very good, and we could not be happier with our entry to that market and our longevity in that market. And we intend to be there as long as we can.
Yeah, it's funny. I love New York City. It's my third time here for the interview. But every time I'm here and I'm walking through, I ran through the city, ran into Central Park, got lost. I ended up on the other side of Central Park. And I'm like, it's beautiful. Man, Miami's got a special energy to it.
It is incredible what you get in terms of value for this. In New York City, you have all of this. It's just incredibly expensive. It's just not the cost of living here, cost of school, cost of restaurants, cost of rent or taxes. It's all the indirect taxation also. And the total package of what it costs to live in New York City is crazy. And in return for that, there are a lot of things that money just cannot buy. And I'm not going to say something as obvious as climate.
Sure.
But climate makes a big difference.
Oh yeah.
But just traffic, cleanliness of the city, noise pollution. And I love New York City, and we've done projects here. This is one of the buildings we own in New York City. We just the magic of real estate. To all you guys out there, I bought this building. My partner was next door, and my best friend since 7th grade. Well, we bought this building for per square foot in the mid-90s is lower than what we're getting per square foot of rent in our best spaces.
Wow.
Literally. Well, we paid per square foot for this thing. So, what's that book, The Magic of Compounding?
Yeah.
Magic of Real Estate. Buy real estate. So we love that. But really take a step back. What Miami offers right now is difficult to duplicate anywhere else in the States, North America.
I love that. Nobody's ever said that. That's a great way. Now let's talk about Miami a little bit more.
Sure.
I read that you think that Miami is the next hub for luxury properties. Obviously, you're putting your money where your mouth is with One River Point and 2000 Ocean. What makes you feel this strongly about Miami? Is it everything that we just discussed, or is there more to that luxury side?
I will tell you. I think in life, whenever you're entering an arena which is competitive in real estate, competitive. And we're outsiders. I don't have a family history. I'm not a real estate dynasty. I don't have a family history. I don't have my uncle being the biggest developer. It's none of this, right? So you have to look at your own strengths and weaknesses and be as realistic as you can and not drink your own Kool-Aid. And one of the things, very important, this cognitive examination of yourself, checking your own biases and your own beliefs and saying, is this correct or not? It's very important in business, in life, in business specifically. And one of the things I've always tried to do in my career is that, look, I can't compete on size because there are people who are doing this here for 100 years, or there are funds here who have gone out and raised $2 billion. What we have always competed on very effectively is identifying macro trends in markets. We've done this in New York repeatedly in neighborhoods. We did this in Miami. We're doing this in DC right now, done in LA. There are certain macro trends you have to identify. And then you say, execution in these areas. How am I going to create that alpha, right? So I have a company called Alpha Terra with a friend of mine who was a very prominent guy at BOA. And Alpha Terra, we got that name is because we're creating alpha in the land business, right? So the alpha we've created and we continue to create is that we really bring about the best in the business in terms of our collaborators and our team. Whether it's our architects, our design, our brand partners, we are second to none. And I say that on the record. And when you're doing that, you're always going to be told by brokers who have a librarian mentality. You know, the old saying about if the stock market was based on what happened before, librarians would be the best stockbrokers in the world, right? So I've always had this vision of going into projects and neighborhoods saying, we are going to do better than what's happened there. And part of the art of development is not having an unrealistic belief in what you can accomplish, but understanding that over and over again, we will always see people come and build a better mousetrap, and where they're told, well, this is not going to sell for this much because the building next door or this neighborhood or this car brand or this shoe brand is selling is this much. And people have some vision, and I hope I'm one of those people. Go in and say,
so you talked about metrics. What were those metrics that you saw in Miami that said, hey, Miami's that hub for luxury coming up?
Look, I take a step back and I say, one of the world's most beautiful cities. It's a node city. So there are two types of cities in terms of importance. You have places like Shanghai or Tokyo, just in terms of size, or Sao Paulo is even a better example. Massive. It's a mini country, okay? Their importance comes from size. Then you have cities like Miami, like Singapore, Dubai, right? These are node cities because there are parts of the world that come together. Miami is this interconnection between Latin America, parts of Europe, and the North American continent. So in terms of importance, it is the Singapore of the Western Hemisphere, right?
Interesting.
And people from Singapore that we brought, they see that right away. They see the port. So you look at the cruise ship business, you look at healthcare, you look at offshore banking. It's a number one inflow for family office wealth outside of the US into Miami. It's not New York, right? So important on many, many different levels. Also happens to be an incredibly beautiful city with great lifestyle and a value proposition that is second to none. You buy luxury apartments in Miami for less than you would pay in Rio, Sao Paulo, or Mexico City. It's insane, right? Yeah. This is one other point. Raphael Vignoli, BNB Italia is our brand partner. Our finishes are absolutely superb, and I want to get it. Anybody can go on our website and check that out.
Plug it. You can plug it away.
So I love 432 Park Avenue. Phenomenal project. Harry, one of the smartest developers in the world. Raphael, brilliant. Okay. The differential is that for the price of what you would buy a one bedroom from us, right, with a 12-foot deep balcony, literally alabaster walls, slab marble, B&B Italia kitchens, Arc Linea kitchen cabinet. For the price of a one bedroom, you will get a bathroom in a building in New York. You know, it's not that we are 20% lower, 40% lower, 50% lower. We are 80% lower. You just can't beat that. In Hallandale, we are offering full floor units, okay, with travertine floor finishes, Minotti bathrooms and Minotti Cucina kitchens. I mean, this is as beautiful a home as you find anywhere in the world, and you're buying it on the beach for $1,000 a square foot. Air rights in New York are $1,000 a square foot. That's the starting point at air rights, right? So the value proposition is absolutely second to none. And when you see that kind of disconnect, just because Miami used to be a $600 square foot market, $700 square foot market, you know what? Doesn't mean it has to stay that. That's right. And in New York City, you look at the price points that were achieved in Tribeca, which we were part of that story, achieved in Chelsea, being achieved in these outlying areas where people come and say, you know, this is what people were paying on Park Avenue. You'll never get that here. Now somebody comes and builds a project that people walk and say, you know what? I'm going to pay that over there. And this is what we believe in Miami. I think we're making our case.
So if you're
slowly and surely.
So we're looking at DC, very established older city, New York, obviously. Then we have Miami, the note city, as you said.
Yeah.
So I've asked this question to a lot of people. So I'm interested in hearing your answer on this.
Sure.
If Miami was a human being,
Yeah.
and you were to give it an age in terms of its maturity and where it's going, what age would you give Miami?
Miami's gone through a rebirth.
Okay.
So Miami is the very hot legal daughter of Sophia Loren. See, Miami went through the Sophia Loren, Gina Lollobrigida age with the Magic City, you say the mob, whatever that means down there, that glamour era, right? Then, like a lot of U.S. cities, you know, it took a downturn, a lot of what happened, and now Miami's in an incredible uptick because you have a whole generation. So, give you anecdotally, when Miami was referred to as an international city, that was really code word for a Latin city. Today, and Latin is great, but today it's international. You have Canadians, you have Russians, you have French, you have Italians, you have Scandinavians, you have Asians buying in Miami. It is a true international city instead of just the capital of Latin America, right?
So if it's on its way back up, what age?
So
late teens, early 20s?
I would say early 20s. At the height of that complexion of youth, experience and beauty coming together and only getting better.
Yeah. You're right in line. Everybody says between late teens to early,
exactly.
like 30 years old.
Absolutely. I'd say below 30. I'd say 27.
27. There
Nothing wrong with 30.
Great age.
I'm much older myself. So.
Hey, my wife is 40. She looks
There
great.
you
So
go.
now, if you were to go back, let's get off Miami a little bit, and because it's interesting. Reading a lot about your interviews, I saw a lot about the market and luxury and what you see as luxury and all that, but there wasn't a lot about your background. But you have this amazing backstory that I really wanted to touch upon. If you can go back in time, right, go back to 1985 and give yourself 2 or 3 pieces of advice about the real estate game, what would it be?
Be less scared about the future, because worrying about events and potentialities 5 and 10 years out is really worse off. Nobody has a crystal ball. Now, it doesn't mean that you drink and drive or you do drugs. That's stupid, because that's not a crystal ball. You know that is going to end in a sad way. But when you're sitting there and looking at deals and thinking, I don't know, if you have the opportunity to do it, you are not going to win it unless you're in it. And I think I was a little bit kneecapped because of the fact that we had a revolution. My father lost, we lost all our money, and being a refugee, having stateless, so that takes a little bit of wind out of you. So maybe I'd have been more aggressive if everything was on plan and I hadn't had these setbacks. But nevertheless, I think generally speaking in business, you if you're in business for yourself, you got to believe. Can't be stupid, but you got to believe. And when you err on the side of being more aggressive, because the time to be aggressive is when you're younger, you have the energy. You don't have other people depending on you, go for it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? A lot of times in life, worst case scenario is not as bad as you think it's going to be. Now, coming to first dates, the best case scenario is not as good as you think it's going to be either. But in business, the worst case scenario is usually not as bad as you think it's going to be. So my advice to my younger self would have been, you know what? I'm always been a high energy, let me go for it, let me go. I would have been more aggressive.
Okay.
That would have been my advice to me.
And you're right, it does, when you have people that depend on you, my wife, I have 4 boys.
It's difficult later in life.
It is.
You're starting off, go for it.
Go for it. What do you got to lose? Sleep on somebody's couch.
That's the time.
Got it. Now, looking back on your career, what would you say was that, 2 last questions.
Please.
Looking back on your career, what would you say is that breakthrough moment that kind of really helped you get to where you are?
So, when I came back, and look, anybody who says otherwise, I would disagree. Luck plays a part in life. Now, if you're religious, I happen to have a deep religious sensibility. I happen to believe in God. That's my personal belief. I don't impose on anybody else. So, the millennial version of that is the universe, whatever that means. But I believe there is a faith that you have to have in yourself, and that faith helps you take advantage of the breaks that life brings you. Right? So. Luck plays a part in life. You have to be ready to capitalize on that. That's why I said, if you're not in it, you're not going to win it, right? But there are times where luck plays, right? And one of the fortunate things for me that really was a seminal event for me is that when I left Thailand and I came back in 1991, I used to be partners with my family. In 1991, I made this decision. Was partners with my brother. My father got us. So, and I said, guys, you know what? I want to be on my own. This is not working for me. That was a very hard decision when I made it at the time, right? So like leaving the family business on my own.
How did they take it?
Not well at all. My father always had this dream of his sons working together. I love my brother, but we could not be two more different human beings. He's a great guy. We just see the world differently, right? And we're much better relationship with each other now that we're not forced to work with each other. He was happy about it. I was happy. My father was unhappy about it. But part of that was that, listen, now I'm on my own, and I came to New York. I had no capital. I didn't know what I was going to do. As a matter of fact, the first deal that I did is I scraped together a small investor from a guy who was a jewelry buyer from us. They really liked it. I said, look, there's a great opportunity. It's $300,000. I scraped together my first deal. But the luck that I had is that I came here when the RTC crisis hit, and there were some incredible opportunities. This is that tail end of the S&L crisis. So I was fortunate in whatever I bought. I could have been the biggest idiot in the world, and at times I probably have been. But the fact that my entry was that point. Now, if I come here, my entry had been in 88, and no matter how smart I was, and I noticed, any deal you make kind of went down, right? That would have maybe changed it for me very much. But the fact that I landed on a nice slope going downhill, that was the luckiest break I had. My point of entry into the real estate market in the U.S. was incredibly fortunate for me.
Yeah, that's a great. I love that, because when you talk about, we were talking about the condo market in Miami right now. This is that point right now for people to get in the game in South Florida.
I will tell you something about real estate. Look, if you're buying real estate in a country and get invaded, and then there's war, that's different, right? Those major geopolitical events we can't control. And putting that aside, in mature economies like ours, okay, if by any statistics, if you look at real estate as an investment asset class over long term, it is second to none. It is just a wealth creator, because it's a storehouse for value. It is an accepted commodity for people because they use it. It has real utility value. It's not like gold that, okay, you own gold, but what does it really do for you? You, to paraphrase Warren Buffett, you spend money to take it out of the ground, you spend money to refine it, then you pay someone to keep it for you underground again, right? But real estate has real utility value, right? You look at this office building. I mean, we leverage it, we rent it, we work with banks, we work with our contractors, we work with our tenants. It's a real business, right? So you put your money in real estate, and as a developer, you don't over leverage yourself. It's always easier said than done, but that's one of the rules. Long term, you may not make money over the time period that you projected, but you will make money in the end. That's why choosing your partner is very important. And choosing your partner, to our friends who are single out there, I think a lot of us spend more time choosing our business partner than our life partner. And I will tell you both, I'm very fortunate, married to a wonderful, wonderful girl. We've been together for over 20 years, and put as much thought into that as you are in your business deals.
That's a great
The shot of tequila, let's go to Vegas, does not work.
That's a great point. All right, last question, and then we move on. Book, and I end every interview with this question: book, TED Talk, or podcast recommendation for the audience.
I don't do podcasts because my brain just does not work that way. If I'm listening to something passively, it doesn't register me. Love TED Talks. I think one of the greatest 8 to 12 minute segments you can listen to. Okay. And as far as book is, continue reading all your life. I have learned more through reading than I learned in my high school or college studies. I've educated myself more with books than on anything else, and I've had some of my best memories in my life reading great works of fiction. And there is nothing that I'm going to sound very corny here, but I really believe is there's nothing that nourishes the human soul or the human mind more than reading a great novel or a great piece of nonfiction history.
You gonna write a book?
On my bucket list, when I finally get to retire, and I hope that's past 85, I am going to write a book. That is absolutely on my bucket list. Because I think I have some things worth saying. At least I think so.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Absolutely.
Hey, pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Any parting words? I'm going to go around, turn off the camera.
Guys, come and visit our project, 2000 Ocean in Hallandale, Wonder Report on the Miami River.
There you go.
Hello.
Thank you.
We're live. Say hello. How's it going, everybody?
And now,
Good to see you, Alex.
Good to see you too, Dev.
Thanks for coming up, man.
All right, I had to warn Dev. I come out with a lot of energy. I'm going to have to raise his chair a little bit. Good morning, everybody. My name is Alex Vidal. I am president of Related ISG International Realty and host of the show you're watching today, episode number 51 of The Closer Club. If you hear my voice break in and out, I was just telling Dev, we had 8 soccer games between my twins being on one team and my 12-year-old on another. They both made it to the finals. We walked away with a championship trophy, an MVP trophy, and I lost my voice, so Kind of hard to do these interviews without a voice, but here we go.
That was good for a good cause for the kids.
It was a great cause. Again, Dev, thank you so much.
Yeah.
You guys know the drill. After 51 episodes, we have 9 questions for Dev. What I love about today's episode is it will be 100% about Fort Lauderdale. The very first one that we do that's only about Fort Lauderdale. So let's get it going.
Let's do it.
Now, Dev plays a lot of roles. Dev, you serve as president and CEO of Merrimack Ventures, which is currently developing the Gale, Fort Lauderdale, and the Four Seasons of Fort Lauderdale, just to name a few. You are the founder and partner of Ramesh Properties and Shift Hand Residential. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Chieftain.
Yeah.
You are heavily involved in the Fort Lauderdale Air and Sea Show, which is this weekend. Some people may even call you the King of Fort Lauderdale. So tell us a little bit about your path to where we are today.
Sure. Well, that would be the wrong moniker. I would say some people call my mom the Queen of Fort Lauderdale.
Fair enough.
That would probably be fair. I just work for the Queen. But we grew up here in Fort Lauderdale, moved here in the mid-'80s. Parents bought a little motel called the Merrimack. So that's where Merrimack Ventures comes from. And we lived in the motel. We operated it. Very interesting time being in Fort Lauderdale, mid-'80s, at a motel on the beach during the spring break heydays. But over time, the city changed, kicked out the spring break, and wanted to be a little bit more of a mature town, or I should say went from a town to a city. And so our business has evolved along with the community. So we started off running little motels. As you mentioned, we're now building the Four Seasons, but also a Hilton Hotel, the Gale, which is a boutique hotel. So the business has grown over the last 3 decades, and my mom was running it with my father. He passed away early. She took over the helm. My brother Nitin, who you had on the show, he came, moved here, was running it with her, and then he moved to Miami, obviously to oversee Miami World Center, and I came back from New York to run the business. So.
Now, you went to New York. What were you doing in New York? And if you can share with the audience, because I read up your resume about your education. And for a guy who had a son at 19 and started working full time and had maybe half a year of college, I was blown away by your college resume.
Yeah, thanks. I went to Duke undergrad, just like my brother. Although I was a fan before he was, he's just older. So he got there. I'd like to point that out. Went to Duke.
No brotherly competition at all.
It wasn't a glamorous upbringing. Growing up in the motels, being here, we didn't really understand the long-term vision. So we both decided we didn't want to come back here and do that. We wanted to go to New York, work on Wall Street. I worked at Credit Suisse, so I was doing structured derivatives, covering hedge funds, and I thought that that would be exciting and obviously lucrative. And after a few years, I just kind of realized I wanted something more entrepreneurial, wanted to be outside, I wanted to be making things happen, and it just felt confined on a trading floor. So. At that time, the business was transitioning. My mom called my brother and I one day and said, "Hey, I'm coming up to New York next week. Can you guys get off for lunch?" We said, "No, Mom. We work on trading floors." He was at Goldman. I was like, "We don't get lunch breaks." She said, "Oh, okay. Well, I have a lunch with Donald Trump. I thought you might want to join." and so that's a whole other story. But here's our mom from Fort Lauderdale running the business, now putting together our first big deal, which was at the time the Trump International. It's now the Conrad. 300-unit condo hotel, kind of all of our own, and that's when we realized there's more to the family business. We started to understand the real estate side as opposed to the hotel operation side, and so then he moved home and then I moved home. We both stopped at Columbia, did the real estate master's program there.
Now, did you make the lunch?
What's that?
Did you make that lunch?
We did. Yeah. We ended up. We did make it. Yeah, both of our bosses understood when we mentioned that.
Yeah.
For the record, this was pre-apprentice. Obviously,
no, it doesn't matter.
So I'm not making any political statements here.
But you know what's interesting about that, Dev? It doesn't matter whether you're, and again, I'm not getting political at all, pro-Trump or anti-Trump. If anybody has an opportunity to have lunch with Donald Trump back then or today, they would be crazy not to take it. For their own motives, right?
Yeah. So it was cool.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned that you like to be out in the field a lot, and you are involved in developments. Single-family home rentals, which was a surprise for me to know. The Wharf, Fort Lauderdale, which we confirmed yesterday, was with my buddy Emmy Guerra. We're going to have Emmy on the show in a few weeks because obviously the nightlife of Miami plays a large role of what makes South Florida that part of its secret sauce. You have a window company, the Air and Sea Show. What led you into each of those ventures? And more importantly, how do you handle it? Because for the realtors who watch this, they may have 5, 10, 20 deals going at once. And it's always that balancing act of how do you maintain what you got while trying to grow
Sure. So how did you get into it, and how do you manage it all?
Sure. So up until 2010, it was really just Merrimack Ventures, which was a family business. After we came through the recession, or the worst of the recession, I wanted to look at buying some new properties. So I started a real estate fund that's for Mesh Properties, brought a couple high net worth investors in, and we kind of went on a buying spree from 2011 to 2014, and just bought up things like Las Olas Riverfront, our Pompano site, a bunch of other stuff. So I was running the family business and the fund had a lot of development properties, but no cash flow. So then we looked at different opportunities to build cash flow. So I created Chieftain Residential, and we went and bought single family homes in Atlanta. So I used to fly up to Atlanta with a bag full of $5 to $10 million of cashier's checks. You had to have change, so I'd go to the bank and order, some fives, which are 5,000s, 10s, 25s, because you didn't get change on the courthouse steps.
Sure.
And I was there once a month buying anywhere from 30 to 80 houses. We now have over 500 houses that we just refinanced.
Holy crap.
And they're fully stabilized.
All in Atlanta?
All, Metro Atlanta area. So that was a cash flow kind of business. So those are the real estate components. And the air show just kind of came up, it went away. It was a big thing in Fort Lauderdale for over a decade.
Sure.
Went away during the recession. A couple people tried to revive it. Some people came to us and said, why don't you get involved? Through a coincidence, I met my current partner who's in the air show business. So you ask how I do these other things, it's always with a partner that knows that business, but where we can add value. So we shook hands on a deal, and we brought the show back. This is now our 6th show. We've got the Blue Angels this year for the first time in over a decade, flying over Fort Lauderdale. So that's special to me because that event was not only cool growing up as being our signature event, but it was also important for our family business. And it's still important for a lot of the hotels on the beach to get that demand off season. So
and the restaurants too, right? That's got to be a huge spike in business.
Everybody, that's really why we did it. I mean, it's great. Kids come out. My nephews now, I got 3 boys. They love it. So it's fun to see all that. But it was really, we just wanted to kind of give back to the beach community that did a lot for us and drive that business. Window company, just some friends of mine from high school. Coincidentally, we met, I ran into when I moved back. We got involved. I was helping them with some business. They had a partner that wanted to get out. They offered to let us buy in. I say us, my brother and I. And so bought part of the company. That was pre-recession, so we actually, we had to fight through the downturn. But those tough times are what make you more successful in the good times. So.
Well, and it's interesting because during the downturn is when you also bought all this prime real estate, right? So there's opportunities.
There is. I mean, look, 08 to 10 wasn't pretty, but we learned a lot. I always say I moved home from New York in 2007, had my master's from Columbia, then I got my real education from 08 to 10, running the business and doing the day-to-day.
It's interesting. So nothing to do with this. How do you feel about today? And so he's not prepped for this at all, but it's been a major topic of conversation on social media today, which is all those celebrity entrepreneurs I was telling you about really are downplaying the value of a college education. And they say, don't go to college, you're going to learn exactly, kind of like what you said. How do you feel about that, by the way? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think it depends on the individual. If you have a passion for something, you know exactly what you want to do coming out of high school or even undergrad, then follow that passion. I mean, the tools are there to be successful with or without it. But for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do. It gave me great relationships, great exposure, and college is there to teach you not what to think, but how to think. Thinking creatively, and so I don't think there's one size fits all. If somebody's got a great idea out of school and they believe in it and they're passionate about it, then go for it. Having passion in what you do is probably the most important key to success. So if you found that early, and you're confident in your idea or your business plan, then go for it. But I don't know that it's for everybody.
It's funny. You said 2 things. That's what my wife says. Aside from the education, it's not so much they teaching you how to think, right? Different ways to think and be in that environment, and the relationships and the friendships that you form, and the partying and all that. That's a part of life. Right? Yeah. Now, and I mentioned this already. What I love about today's interview is that we're really going to focus all of it on Fort Lauderdale, and you kind of touched upon a little bit about your family's deep history here. Tell us a little bit more about how your family ended up here and why Fort Lauderdale versus maybe some of the other parts of the country, or even Florida.
Yeah, so I was born in St. Charles, Missouri, of all places. My dad went to business school, came from India, went to business school in the Midwest. We had family there, so we started a business there. We had some family that were running motels that were down here. He had an illness that the doctor said be better if he, being my father, better if you lived in a warmer climate.
Okay.
We used to come down here and visit. Seemed like a great place. We already had family here, so we bought a motel, the Merrimack, in 1986.
Okay.
Right on A1A. And he put his life savings, or my parents put their life savings, because my mom was always active in the business from day one, and they put their life savings in and bought the first property. And so that's how we ended up in Fort Lauderdale. But the interesting thing was, immediately after we bought, the city started the process of kicking out spring break. So the American dream, as we thought, we bought this property, we're on the ocean, we had a pool. I mean, how cool is that, right? You moved from the Midwest and now you're on the beach with a pool. It's a cool thing. But the American dream,
in the winter especially.
Well, yeah, exactly. We had a lot of old friends from there that come and visit. But the American dream quickly, turned into the American nightmare, because all of a sudden our business was gone. We didn't know we didn't know the market. So quickly, my father got very involved in the community. Got involved with the Chamber of Commerce, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the city decided that they wanted to redevelop the beach, and that they wanted to go for a more mature, affluent family demographic versus spring break. And so, like I said, our business just evolved into that over time. We were kids, so we didn't understand that long-term vision, but that was always there, and he was a big part of that conversation and that process back in the 80s and the early 90s. So,
do you remember that time?
Oh yeah. My first business was a lemonade stand on A1A, and but I'd sell lemonade to spring breakers that were stuck in traffic.
Sure.
Because A1A was jammed.
They were probably filling it with vodka.
Well, that's what I said. I said that to someone the other day. I said if I was a little more entrepreneurial, I probably would have sold added floaters. But I was 7 at the time, so I don't think my parents would have.
I would have been a customer for sure.
So yeah, it's a slightly different upbringing than most, but it was definitely unique, and I think taught me a lot of what's valuable today.
That's awesome. Well, let's get to Fort Lauderdale itself and what's happening in Fort Lauderdale today. What makes Fort Lauderdale so unique, in particular, if you were to compare it to the South Miami or to the Northwest Palm? And what's one thing that realtors should be including about Fort Lauderdale to their clients in their elevator pitch?
Yeah, the thing is people always try to compare them as their alternatives, and the reality is they're completely distinct markets.
Okay.
So we don't get a lot of people in Fort Lauderdale that are considering Miami or Fort Lauderdale. Usually they find an affinity towards one or the other. We get a lot of people that are in Miami that love it for a period of time, but then they want something that maybe is a little less intense, less traffic, less congestion. They love the waterways, and so they kind of mature into Fort Lauderdale. But I always say Miami's our best amenity. We want it nearby, especially with the addition of Brightline. Now you don't have to drive. You can take the train or you take an Uber, so it's even better now. But it's not. They're not alternatives. And again, Palm Beach is distinctive as well. It tends to be a little bit older, even more sleepy. So my friends in Palm Beach, they go to the same 3 or 4 places. In Fort Lauderdale, we go to the same 8 to 10 places. And in Miami, you've got 800 places to count. So they're different. I like being in Fort Lauderdale because I'm 5 minutes from everything. I'm 5 minutes from the airport. I'm 5 minutes from the beach. I'm 5 minutes from the downtown. So it's very convenient to live here. I don't have to spend a lot of time in traffic. But as I mentioned earlier, I've got a place down in Miami, and I do appreciate that. Having lived in New York, I like that city life, that intensive. I just don't want it on a daily basis. So Fort Lauderdale is definitely in a different demographic. I'd say as you mature, you kind of move up the coast, right? So Miami is the younger party crowd, and then Fort Lauderdale, you have kids, you still like to go out, still want to have good options for food and beverage restaurants, but you want a little bit of maybe a little bit quieter pace. So Fort Lauderdale's great for that. Then the kids are gone and you're a little bit older and you want something even quieter, you move north to Palm Beach. So that's not a perfect analogy, but I think it gives you a general sense.
Now, do you see that? How do you see it? And again, this is not on here, but one of the things I love is the boom of rentals that are coming into. I mean, what you're doing with PMG on the river, and then along in Fat Village, there's a ton of rentals going on. You know, how do you see that playing into how Fort Lauderdale is going to shape up? Is that the next generation that's going to be moving into these luxury condos on the beach?
Look, I think we're selling it over $1,600 a foot at the Four Seasons, so I don't know that you're going from a rental to a
congrats, man,
to a Four Seasons. But you know, the best part is that proves the rental market proves that Fort Lauderdale has become a true live-work play environment, a true city, because we have all these great food and beverage options, this nightlife. And I said 8 to 10. We have a lot more than that.
Yeah.
You know, we just become a creature of habit and frequent 8 to 10. But there's tons of options, and so Fort Lauderdale has matured as a market. And so it's not a place where you're going and visiting your parents or grandparents. It's a place where young people want to live because of the excitement that's happening. So I think that's just a testament to the market maturing and growing. But yeah, you know, right now I think you're seeing a trend in rentals throughout the country. Home ownership rates have come down. Part of it's millennial lifestyle choices. Part of it's empty nesters. You know, we're building this project, 629 residences south of the river, targeting that empty nester demographic. So someone who can afford to be in a condo, but wants the flexibility of renting. They want fully serviced, managed building with all the amenities, but they don't want to be tied down. So I think it's just preferences from a lot of demographics are shifting towards rental. And maybe that's the hangover from the you know, the recession and the housing crisis. Where no longer is it guaranteed that housing prices go up. But there's also, I mean, these buildings are just like condos, and you're getting amazing amenities and you're getting amazing service without having to put down the big down payment and everything. So I think it's a little bit of a trend throughout the nation.
And you nailed it on the head with the fact that Fort Lauderdale is evolving to a full-time home work life balance versus just coming in the party and then leave it back to their homes or whatever it is. Yeah. How do you think the rest of the world sees Fort Lauderdale?
So, you know, we're still dealing with a little bit of the spring break stigma. So many people around the world came here that and remember it that way. So we're still getting through that. We need to get those people back and to see that we have a Ritz-Carlton and a Four Seasons and the Gale and other things coming to market. Bright Line now, you have that connectivity. Sure. There's no question those that are in the yachting world know that it's the yachting capital of the world. And so we've got all the waterfront homes, so you have all the big, you know, a lot of people with big boats and that come, but it's still a laid back environment, which is nice, you know. So you'll be down at the Elbow Room and you'll bump into, you know, I'll bump into somebody that used to work for us at the Merrimack, and then you'll bump into a guy who's a billionaire, and they're dressed the same and you don't know the difference. And that's the beauty of Fort Lauderdale, is that you can blend in. It's still got that boating laid back culture, but it's also matured a lot in terms of the luxury options. And so I think that's the part where we still want people to realize, and they're starting to, because if you think about the 80s, right, that person that was coming here, they're 20 years old, well now they're 50, right? And so 30 years later, 35 years later, and so all of a sudden that guy's got real money, and he might want to come down here and go to the Elbow Room and have a couple drinks, or go to Blondie's and relive his glory days. But he doesn't want to go back to the Merrimack. He wants to go to the Four Seasons, right? And so that person has matured, so has this market. So I think quickly that story is being told. There's been a lot of global press. The other thing is our airport. It just continues to expand. And so we have additional connectivity internationally, not just domestically, but internationally. So I have friends in Brazil who used to come, and of course we go to Miami every year. And the CFO of his company, when I was in Brazil visiting last year, told me that his family started flying to Fort Lauderdale now because there's a direct on Azul. Yeah. And so now they come to Fort Lauderdale as their annual vacation, and they go down and they spend a couple days in Miami. So Miami's the side trip versus Fort Lauderdale.
Interesting.
So again, it's just that's just because their preferences have changed, but it's also that the market's matured and we have hotel options, we have restaurant options that appeal to that more.
And now residential options like the Four Seasons, as you've mentioned. Yeah. At Albert's,
Albert's fantastic. Yeah, related crushed it there. They did great there. Before that, my brother did Paramount, and then just sold out there, and we obviously did the Gale. So it's got a variety of options, and yeah, it's changing. But you know, stigmas take a little while to get over, you know, and so we welcome you to come visit and check out what we've got going on.
Now, what if you were to put one thing as your favorite about Fort Lauderdale, what would it be?
The favorite is just the ease of living here. Like I said, yeah, I mean, everything, it can be 5 or 10 minutes away. And so when you're in a rush, or for me, I'm running around from project to project. We have 10 developments going on in different phases. So I'm in the car a lot running around. I can manage that lifestyle here. I can also, get down the street on Las Olas and, go out and just meet all my friends easily, get to the beach easily. So, and if I travel a lot, so ease of getting in and out of the airport is also a huge plus. So first and foremost, I'd say that's it, convenience.
Now, this one question I'm going to ask you next, I didn't give you the answer. I told you what it was, but I didn't give you what the answers were. I've asked this about Miami to your brother, to every developer I've interviewed down in Miami, but I've never asked it about Fort Lauderdale, so I'm really curious to hear your answer. If you were to give Fort Lauderdale an age, because when you look at New York or Chicago or LA, those cities are really old and mature, what age would you give Fort, if it was a human being, what age would you give Fort Lauderdale?
Well, it's funny that you say that because I'm actually going to the Historical Society tonight. I'm a board member, and we're celebrating Fort Lauderdale's birthday. And I think it's the 111th birthday, so officially. But I would really say, we're probably somewhere in our 40s.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I say that because, like anything, it was kind of a slow growth. The market developing over time. So while it's been around for 100 plus years, we really come into our own over the last 30 to 40 years. And that's because the city fathers at that time decided that we didn't want to be a town. We wanted to be the best mid-sized city in America. That was a moniker. And we won some awards to that effect.
Sure.
And so we didn't want to be a massive city. We didn't want the traffic and congestion. But we wanted the amenities of a real city. And so that's when they changed the zoning on the downtown, they changed the beach, and then you started to see the results of that now. So, and that's also kind of our target demographic, mid-40s, late 50s, somebody's got kids, maybe they're, going to age out soon, and they want to see themselves here as empty nesters, not completely gray hair, but, getting there, kind of like myself. And I'm 38. I'm a younger brother, for the record. Another shot. Yeah. So, but I have the gray hair because I get the harder deals. So that's what I tell them.
Because you're Fort Lauderdale, condo hotels, all that. Yeah. It's interesting. The answer that most people give about Miami is in their 30s. Yeah. Because it's still like they're just coming out of that party phase. They're kind of like a little bit more mature, but they still want to party. But that kind of really goes in line with what you're talking about, the vibe and the hustle of Miami versus the vibe and what the hustle is in Fort Lauderdale. Now, this weekend is the Air and Sea show. Yeah. I know we mentioned it a few times. How did you get involved in such a cool idea or concept? I love it. And I really want to know, did you ever go into one of those fighter jets? Because that's like my bucket list for sure.
Yeah. So how do we get involved? Earlier, like I said, it was here, it went away. Then the city really wanted to bring it back. A couple people tried. My mom had started some events on the beach, and nothing to this scale. And so we were encouraged to kind of pursue it to help bring it along. And it was just a coincidence. A friend called me one day and said, "Hey, can you meet a friend of a friend? They want to meet you." It's my partner, Brian Lilly. He's doing a couple air shows in other markets. Said, "Hey, I want to bring it back. Here you're the person to talk to." By the end of dinner, we shook hands and said, "Let's do it." And when we brought the idea to my mom, this was in 2011. And he said, "Well, okay, we'll plan for 13. And she said, "We'll only do it if we're doing it next year." And he said, "We can't. It's too much, not enough time. I need all these forms filled out for the military and blah, to get the jet teams." She said, "Give me the forms." And 2 weeks later, she had everything signed and said, "Okay, we're doing the show."
Who did she call?
City manager and mayor at the time. Mayor Seiler was there, and he was always a big supporter of it. Did it for 3 reasons. I mean, partially because, and first and foremost for me, it helped the beach businesses. Sure. And during a lot of tough times, a lot of recessionary times, it was helpful to our family business to get through those tough times. So we wanted the businesses to survive. Wanted to support our military. Obviously, it's a big part of doing the show. And then finally, just kids, like growing up as a youngster, remembering it was just a cool thing. And so it's a real family event, and we made sure we brought it back to bring it back as a family event. I have not been in a fighter jet. I've been in a number of planes. Okay. There's a protocol for getting into the Thunderbirds and Blues. Yeah. But
Maybe you could call your mom. She could get you off it.
She would get the ride before me, and she would do it. So I'll tell you a funny story. The first year they asked us, they said, well, we had the Red Bull helicopter, which was the first helicopter to do the guy to do a backflip. His name was Chuck Aaron. And they said, do you want to go in the helicopter? And it was her birthday. I won't say which birthday. And so she said, well, I want to go. So, okay. So we jumped in and we started doing backflips and barrel
in the helicopter.
Yeah. And so that night I'm at an event at one of our parties, and we have the Red Bull guys in the wingsuits jump out of a plane and they fly into the party on the beach, and they come in. And so I'm talking to the wingsuit guy, and the helicopter pilot walks by and says, hey, did you have a good time? Did your mom have a good time? Yeah, thanks. And then I look back at the wingsuit guy, and he's white, and he goes, you went up there and you took your mom? I was like, yeah. And he's like, dude, that guy's crazy. And I said to him, I said, you just jumped out of a plane in a wingsuit.
Yeah.
And I said, and you're saying that guy's crazy? He goes, yeah, but I wasn't the first guy to try it.
Oh, got it.
So I didn't realize all that at the time, but that was probably the coolest air show experience.
Yeah.
He's now retired. There's a few other guys that do it.
So you made it out alive.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. We were doing barrel rolls, and so we've gone up in a few other planes.
Okay.
Some of the stunt planes over the Everglades, they just rip around. But I'm getting a little bit more cautious in my older age.
I hear you. So my 41st birthday is now in a few weeks, in May 26th. And last year I said I was going to do it for my 40th. I wanted to skydive.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't do it. So I'm going to do it this year, and I have a 21-year-old son. He's going to do it with me. He's like, if you go, I'll go. So that's it. I've already committed. I'm committing on camera that we're going.
Nice.
Last question, man, and then I'll let you go on with your day. And I ask this to every interview I've done. Do you have a book, podcast, or TED Talk recommendation for the audience?
I would say from a book perspective, and it's a little generic, but this most recent book I read that I found interesting, $1 Billion Whale.
Okay.
It's about the whole 1MDB scandal. And it's just interesting because the players involved, $5 billion fraud, you had Goldman Sachs involved, you had all these players, and all these celebrities around this thing, and you wonder how this day and age, a fraud like that could happen on such a massive scale with all these institutional partners, and you realize, life's not as black and white as it seems, even at the, at that level. So it's worth a read.
Okay. How about TED Talk? Do you watch podcasts or listen to podcasts?
I don't. I really don't. I don't get to them usually, and I don't do a lot of TED Talks. I'm usually out at the Milken Conference this week, and I hit a lot of panels there. And if you haven't been, the Milken Global Conference is awesome. You get all your TED Talks fixed in 1 week, and you're around the most amazing people in the world. It just coincided with the air show, so I couldn't make both happen this year. But I'd say The $1 Billion Whale is a cool book.
There you go. Episode number 51 in the books. Dev, thanks
man. Bring the kids to the air show this week.
I want to.
That
was awesome. This is great. You blew my expectations away, man. Thanks. I appreciate it. Any parting words for the audience before I turn it off?
No, my brother's great. I know I give him a hard time on these things, but he's awesome.
Awesome.